Also, thank you, my friends, for finally remembering my phone number. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Was the exclusion of John Paul Jones an obvious sort of...
Shut up.
No.
An obvious.
Oh, it don't matter. It's just that Jonesy was busy and we're busy.
New Year!
That doubles your refreshment. Doublemint, there's no single gum like it. And Coca-Cola, can't beat the real thing.
With Jimmy Page and David Coverdale working on their album, the Led Zeppelin world saw glimpses of public events and activity from their surviving members.
The influence of the Yardbirds through their famous frontmen was all pervasive. For another decade, rock music was driven by a conscious reaction to their style.
It's very hard to live up to what you said there, and it's also hard to live up to some of the acts here tonight.
Travelling endless miles in buses that got stuck in snow all over America was going to pay off. I just knew it.
Actually, before I came up here, I thought, well, I'll keep it short, so I'm going to keep it short. But before we go any further, there's one person who can't be with us tonight, and that's Keith Relf. I'd like to introduce you to his wife, April, and his son, Jason. Many thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I have done other music after the Yardbirds, but anyway, somebody told me I should be proud tonight. But I'm not, because they kicked me out. They did. That's right. Fuck them.
Freddie Mercury's passing in November 1981 shook the music world. A very special tribute concert was held at Wembley Stadium on April 20th, 1992. 72,000 ticket holders witnessed an all-star cast of performers, from Metallica and Guns N' Roses at their prime, to several guest singers playing Queen classics next to Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon. So we see Robert staring at one of the most ambitious songs by Queen. The studio recording was inspired by Led Zeppelin's Kashmir and featured Steve Howe from Yes on classical guitar. Plant had not performed live since January 1991, making this quite a bold and dangerous attempt at one of Queen's most difficult tracks. He overestimated his abilities, no question. I would like to know what was going through John Deacon's mind here. Robert came in and his microphone was off. He struggled through the key changes. This wasn't a walk in the park. In classic Robert Plant fashion, he forgot some of the lyrics. The middle section had him singing the words for Kashmir for the first time since 1988. Brian May killed it on guitar for the flamenco portion of the song. Roger Taylor and John Deacon were locked in like Jones and Bonham in the 70s. Plant was back at his theatrics and his voice was slightly better. He managed to finish the song, but the damage was done. It remains the only time Queen played this live. Not even the post-Freddie Mercury lineups revisited the track. I guess we should say thank you, Robert, for kind of ruining this song. I imagine Queen fans around the world hated Robert Plant for this. In behalf of all Led Zeppelin fans, sorry guys. A synthesizer transition led the band into a drone sound in the key of D for Led Zeppelin's Thank You, a first time for Robert since July 29th, 1973. Staying on the same key of D, Brian May went into Crazy Little Thing Called Love, a song that made absolute sense as it lived in the same universe of Led Zeppelin's Candy Store Rock and Hot Dog, as well as the Honey Drippers album from 1984. I'm pretty sure Plant felt relief after Innuendo. Singing this rockabilly number was a walk in the park for Robert. You gotta love Queen's rhythm works. They were a one-of-a-kind band, really. Props to John Deacon for retiring. It was the right thing to do after their incredible career. It's just mind-blowing to think May and Taylor continue without Freddie. People are just strange. Robert Plant knew his limitations and requested Innuendo to be taken off the final video release. A humble moment from Robert Plant. Thank you, Percy. Now here's Freddie doing Immigrant Song back in 1986.
And another world report, this time from London, where thousands of die-hard fans turned up recently to attend a convention devoted to the long-defunct but still astonishingly popular band Led Zeppelin.
When I started growing up, I didn't sort of really realise how good they were, and until I got a bit older, I had an interesting conversation with the guitarist that played with Phil Collins, that they used to go to the Marquee.
I think it's been a vision I've had for many, many years. I've been a real big collector for years. I've been a fan. I've written books. I've written magazines. I just thought, a meeting of the minds of all the key collectors would be really wonderful. And
in related news, there's a new book out about Led Zeppelin called Stairway to Heaven, written by the band's one-time tour manager Richard Cole and filled with all the requisite wild tales.
If you think the band is ever going to get back together, is there any chance? I know, when John Bonham died, the drummer, he died in what year? It was like 70?
80.
It was in 80? Okay.
It's really hard to know. I can't see it, but then who knows? I mean, I know Robert's making an album at the moment, so, that by the time he makes the album and then tours, that's another 2 years. I really can't see anything happening before that comes around again, when someone's free to do something.
Robert Plant went into the studio to record his sixth studio album, Fate of Nations. Out the window went the rockstar persona and the self-indulgence of manic nirvana. Robert went back to his roots and embraced storytelling from a different angle. He was burned out from the 1988-1991 period. It was time to move on. Much work was put into these sessions, going back to a similar Robert Plant mood of Principle of Moments, retrieving away from the limelight, redesigning the ship at the right time and place. These sessions were different, featuring additional musicians to Plant's Mark II lineup. An interesting and shocking bit of information here: guitarist Doug Boyle was featured in just 2 songs. Robert seems to have hired this guy on his Olympic guitar chops and onstage volume. I find it revealing he got such a small part on Fate of Nations. There's a lot of folks on the list of musicians for the album. I'll give you some numbers in terms of personnel. We have 2 keyboards, 6 guitar players, 1 mandolin player, 2 Indian percussionists, 4 drummers, 2 violinists, 1 hurdy-gurdy player by the name of Nigel Eaton, string sections, and 4 backing singers. As you can see, this was the first Robert Plant solo album to have so many people involved. Famous names included guitarist Kevin McMichael of Cutting Crew fame. Yeah, he's the guy from the song I Just Died in Your Arms. He is the main guitar player on most of the songs from Fate of Nations, with a sound reminiscent of Robert Blunt. I guess that's why the record is so good, right? The old Robert Blunt sound. The new lineup also included English violinist Nigel Kennedy, Chris Hughes on drums, who produced songs from The Big Chair by Tears for Fears, and also shared producer duties on Fate of Nations with Robert Plant. Last but not least, Fate of Nations had Michael Lee on drums, who was currently with the Cult at the time. His name would become a familiar face on the post-Led Zeppelin story. Tim Palmer was the main mixing engineer for Fate of Nations. He had produced Now and Then and got to mix Pearl Jam's 1991 debut, 10. As much as fans rivaled this album to Coverdale Page, people need to remember Robert Plant had a lot of helping hands as opposed to Jimmy working with a 4-piece band. Both albums are worth listening and come from very different places, but it has to be said, Fate of Nations is the best sounding album. An emotional journey back to the principle of moments, back to the vulnerable side of Robert Plant, and even throwing a Tim Harding cover, If I Were a Carpenter. We can tell for sure if Robert Plant had MTV's Unplugged in mind when writing these songs, but Robert, the average gypsy with a good ear for what's going on in the music world, created an almost perfect record to be played at these type of sessions. MTV's Unplugged saw great performances like 1991's Paul McCartney and Sting, plus Eric Clapton's insanely popular set that went on to become the third highest selling album of 1992. Solo career Robert Plant knew when to shift gears and ride the wave. The more you think of the timing for Fate of Nations, the more it seems everything but a coincidence. Where Jimmy Page was sort of blinded by heavy riffs and Coverdale's intensity to no fault of his own, Robert was always one step ahead. He saw the cultural awakening of a new generation embracing the ideals of the 60s. A decade he knew well as an outcast, walking directionless into Maybe, rescued by the vision of Page, the methodic session man working guitars 24/7.
This was a big turning point for me. The whole idea of actually combining with a co-producer who'd got good chops, clever, patient, and very detailed guy. Chris Hughes came along and he was connected to the people around me at the time. I'd stopped this kind of sacrosanct sort of, I suppose you'd call it, loyalty to the band as a thought process. So I'd been through the 60s and 70s in bands, and that was the kind of tabernacle of creativity and life, was to be in the band, you know, not to bring somebody else in because you wanted it different. In the early 80s, it was a pretty good combination. So they were great, but by the time we got to 1993, I was determined to grow up a little bit, to finally shed all the last remnants of the Lemon song, I suppose, at least that particular time. There is a guy actually still called Francis Dunnery, and he was in a group called It Bites. And these days, prog is considered like, we laugh at prog. I guess he was at the sharp end of all of it. He was magnificently nuts. And his energy, with all the chops that he had as a prog guitar player, but when he was playing with me, he had to bring in the Howlin' Wolf side of it. So it was just a fantastic departure. And I just met this guy called Michael Lee, who was playing with the Cult. Well, I mean, I've been very blessed playing alongside some spectacular drummers. I mean, really, all the way through. Richie Hayward came with me for about 5-6 years after leaving Little Feat. Phil Collins helped me on my first 2 solo albums, put his stuff on one side and came and kicked the rhythms together on the first 2 records. And there's just all the time, there were great drummers. And Michael Lee, he was spectacular. He stayed with us through, I spent a couple of years working with Jimmy Page again with an Egyptian orchestra and bunches of presets, and Michael came through that. So, I mean, he had the capacity to drum with the right amount of passion and verve, but at the same time, he was a very clever drummer. So we got the drone, but they couldn't play, they were unable to read the musical elements of the riff. Interestingly, we had to thank them very much, and that didn't really work. But I just happened to know, back up in Malvern, the sort of shadowy bastard grandson of William Blake was living on the side of a hill with his fiddle, Nigel Kennedy. He and I had got very opposing feelings about Midland soccer. So he came along, he did everything. He played all the parts, did harmonies. Then we made the most amazing video for it. And the video is in absolute empathy, synchronicity with the song. And Nigel was resplendent in his small silk waistcoat, kicking like unbelievable. It's a great video.
Now let's take a look at the tracks from Fate of Nations. Track 1, Calling to You, is a prototype for 1994's Unledded, with a massive guitar riff and groove following the footsteps of Plant's Slow Dancer from Pictures at 11. It's the most Led Zeppelin sounding tune from the record. Drums were played by Pete Thompson. His resume included British glam rock band Silverhead, where he shared the stage with Robbie Blunt and Michael DeBars of featured detective works via Swan Song. Kevin McMichael and Nigel Kennedy add their flair and vibrant chops to this hard rock number. The song is deceiving as you think the rest of the album follows this same style. Track number 2, Down to the Sea, is an up-tempo world music adventure with Charlie Jones adding bass lines and keyboards. It works as a transition vehicle with a live-in-concert feel to it. Track 3, Coming to My Life, is the blueprint for future Robert Plant's solo career endeavors to date. He slowed things down for a triple guitar attack of Kevin McMichael, Francis Dunnery, who was famous for the 1986 hit Calling All Heroes by British band It Bites, and was also in Ozzy Osbourne's first pre-Randy Rhoads band after Black Sabbath. Guitar number 3 was played by none other than Fairport Convention's own Richard Thompson. Backing vocals were done by Mare Brennan, whose sister is famous singer Enya. Drums were played by both Chris Hughes and Pete Thompson here. A classic 90s song that captures the middle-of-the-road mood of Big Log into the new decade. Track 4 is I Believe, one of the finest pieces of music on the album and Robert Plant's solo career. The lineup here features Hughes, Jones, McMichael, Nigel Eaton on hurdy-gurdy, and Phil Johnston on piano. As a continuation to Zeppelin's All My Love, this was a song dedicated to Carrick Plant, filled with enough emotion to heal their wounds from the past into the digital age of forever. Track 5, 29 Palms, it's Robert Plant's second most popular track on Spotify at 27 million plays. It's catchy and has some of the Now and Zen vibes without distortion but acoustic guitar power, courtesy of Doug Boyle and Kevin McMichael. Track 6, Memory Song, follows the drumming and guitar crunch tradition of When the Levee Breaks. It's a long drone with Plant reflecting on the past. Rumor has it, this song was for Jimmy Page. The music and arrangement has some Led Zeppelin influence there, so you be the judge. Track 7, If I Were a Carpenter, is a cover of Tim Hardin's 60s classic. It sounds cheesy and feels out of place on this record, to be honest. Robert's voice is great here, but it's just weird having this on Fate of Nations. This was Robert's second time adding a cover song on a solo album after track 8 from Manic Nirvana, a slight warning sign in the songwriting department, and a Robert Plant future solo career template of playing other people's material. Track 8, Promised Land, featured Robert Plant himself on guitar next to Francis Dunnery and Kevin McMichael. Chris Blackwell shared drumming duties next to Chris Hughes on this one. The overall vibe here sounds like Manic Nirvana's Tie-Dye on the Highway, Part 2. Track 9, The Greatest Gift, is one of the greatest gifts of the 90s, a sublime piece of music that brings the best out of Robert Plant, from carefully placed guitars to beautiful string arrangements. It's a sincere modern classic of introspective energy and liberating splendor. It's my favorite track on the record. Track 10, Great Spirit, is a laid-back funk with after-hours vibes and tasty grooves that looks into the future of the 90s decade. A blend of smooth intentions and the perfect soundtrack for an independent film about existential roadblocks and going nowhere. Track 11, Network News, features Doug Boyle and Kevin McMichael, leading the way with a fantastic guitar riff that drives the song through many textures and Middle Eastern instruments like a musical prophecy of things to come. And yes, this one features drummer Michael Lee. Quite the Unledded preparation, right? Now, the 2007 edition of Fate of Nations featured bonus track Colors of a Shade. This track, though, was included in the UK edition of the album. A magnificent acoustic voyage with Martin Alcock on guitar. He was famous for playing with Fairport Convention and Jethro Tull from 1985 to 1986. This song should have been on the album, really. An acoustic mix of Great Spirit was added to great effect. We can appreciate a different perspective on this song with the legendary Rainer Potacek on resonator guitar. He was discovered by ZZ Top's Billy Gibbons. Robert flew Potacek up to England for this record. Talk about respect. Rainer's guitar work is inspirational. Roller Coaster is a 4-minute demo that sounds very 90s with electronic beats, keyboard strings, and once again, it sounds like Manic Nirvana's Tie Down on the Highway. 805 is a Moby Grape cover with Kevin McMichael and Robert Plant delivering an intimate rendition of this classic. Last but not least, we have Dark Moon, a duet of Plant and Rainer Potachik's resonator guitar, a bone-chilling exchange of musical motifs and phrases, like a modern version of Hats Off to Roy Harper from Zeppelin 3. Too bad it was not included on the final selection. Fate of Nations is a tasteful mix of electric and acoustic textures, elegant drumming backbeats, inventive destinations and carefully placed elements. It's the album Robert Plant had been chasing since 1979. Despite its great mixing choices though, Fate of Nations has one problem. It lacks a purpose, argument, and concept. It makes you wonder what was Robert trying to say here. Looking at the album cover by Martin Kalman plus the booklet images of social commentary, some of the musical ideas are strange in the grand scheme of things. You'd think the artwork featuring children watching a dying planet would have a soundtrack of similar vibrations. If this is a record that worries about the fate of nations, songs like 29 Palms and If I Were a Carpenter make no sense next to the other numbers here. Robert himself was very evasive when asked about the meaning of 29 Palms. Don't get me wrong, the songs overall are very good, but as an experience, it leaves you guessing what was the real message of it all. Manic Nirvana was more consistent. Fate of Nations sounds like a collection of moments and experiences. All the different recording lineups suggest a different album title was needed for this one. It doesn't sound like a band but a session musician revolving door environment at Plant's disposal. One thing's for sure, Robert is a chameleon. Just as a side note, I want to mention Doug Boyle's 2009 prog rock album, The Third Rail. Check out track number 1, Dog Unit, with Caravan's David Sinclair on lead keyboards, Boyle on guitar and keyboards, and former Robert Plant solo career bandmate Chris Blackwell on drums. Such a talented combo that Robert was lucky to have indeed. We gotta give them props for their high-level musicianship.
Chicago Stadium has not hosted a hometown clinching since back in 1938.
It is, man. It's just so gratifying for me personally. You know, I went through a lot of hard times this year, but you know, I stayed strong. Everybody supported me. And, we played well today.
Robert Plant. And when I was heroes and flows all down, down, where I leave you when the summer comes. Go away. Yeah, I've got to go away. Yeah,
September 28, 1992, Peter Gabriel's sixth studio album, Us, was released. Among the long list of musicians on the record was John Paul Jones himself, credited for percussion, bass, and keyboard parts on track number 8, 14 Black Paintings. Revisiting the song confirms Jones' ability to deliver his chops in a wide variety of musical terrains, making great use of his signature drone motifs and clever bass lines. I bet Robert Plant enjoyed this album and this track. It has Fate of Nations written all over, but of course, it's Peter Gabriel, one of rock and roll's greatest innovators. John Paul Jones added his orchestral arrangements expertise on 4 tracks from R.E.M's Automatic for the People, released on October 5th. The man behind the music, the silent genius produced and composed multimedia shows for Mercedes-Benz and the Seville Expo of 1992. Jones also starred in a rare recording session with Rod Stewart and David Gilmour. The song was In a Broken Dream, written in 1960. Rod Stewart recorded this in 1970 but failed to make the charts. This take from 1992 was released in 2009 as a part of a retrospective Rod Stewart album. Last but not least, John Paul Jones played piano on Brian Eno's 12th solo studio album, NerveNet, which makes use of keyboards, drum loops, samples, vocals, guitars, and saxophone. A fascinating record that speaks of 90s electronic music innovation and experiments of sound.
Fight the real enemy.
A hot breakfast buddy sandwich with crispy hash browns and fresh coffee is now just $1.59. And a breakfast buddy with sausage is only 59 cents.
What kind of grief would you give him?
Whatever I had to do.
And physically, what would you do?
Whatever I had to do.
Is it true that you would hang certain people out of a hotel room 15 floors up from their heels?
No. No. But it could be a first today.
October 20th, 1992, the Tribute to John Bonham concert was held in New York with Zebra's own Randy Jackson on guitar and vocals, plus heavy metal giant Randy Coven on bass.
He flew in last night. The legend himself, Mr. Tommy Aldridge. I'd like to thank John Bonham for turning me on, dude. I heard the first Led Zeppelin record when I was a bit younger than I am now. And I said, Jesus has shown up and he's playing drums. I said, oh my God, this is some new information. I heard Good Times, Bad Times, and it changed my life, you know. And I want to thank Jason Bonham for making this possible, and thank him for carrying the torch that his father so graciously passed to him. Thanks very much. And now he has a new group. The album and the group is the same name, called Heavy Bones. I'd like a great New York round of applause for Mr. Frankie Ranelli.
A lot of people don't take into account that not only was his playing so powerful, but he also played the real quiet numbers with a lot of taste and a lot of finesse. John Bonham will always be remembered, and nobody's ever going to equal him. So thanks a lot for coming down. God bless you, John.
The show featured many top drumming names in rock and roll, including Jason Bonham coming off touring with his own band Bonham for the last time in the 90s. They played as opening act for Emerson & Palmer on their Black Moon tour. Bonham released their second album, Mad Hatter, to mixed reviews. I went back and listened to this record, and well, Jason's playing is fantastic. You gotta give him props for delivering such a fine performance. You can feel young Bonzo's energy in his confident playing. Now the songs themselves carry some of the vibes from their debut with more keyboards and complex arrangements. The inevitable references to Led Zeppelin, Whitesnake and Aerosmith cannot be ignored. These guys were young. Guitar and bass provide a hard rock showcase of theatrics and tight lines. As an album experience though, it's quite uneven. The musicianship of Jason's bandmates is passionate but somewhat immature. Singer Daniel McMaster had the pipes but needed more restraint. You kinda wish Jason recorded an album with Jimmy Page and maybe David Coverdale. Standout tracks on Mad Hatter include Change of Season and The Storm, which really sounds like a song from Coverdale Page. Check this out and you'll be surprised. Bonham disbanded after 1992.
Magazine Q held its third annual music awards in London last week, handing out huzzas to everyone.
In September 1980, John Bonham died, and so did Led Zeppelin. In the 12 years that have followed, the confusions of trend and, I suppose, fashion.
I remember us. The music was good, and I'm glad. I assume that a lot of people who didn't know about us or see us live are now picking up on what we did, and you know, it's really nice.
On the next episode of Post-Led Zeppelin 1990s, we will revisit the mighty year of 1993 with a throwdown of Coverdale Page versus Fate of Nations. A very busy year for Page and Plant, tours that didn't happen, tours that did, and the stepping stone for Unledded, behind closed doors. As always, thank you my patrons for your support, as well as the PayPal donators. You guys keep this project alive. Take care. Bye bye.